Welcome to Behind the Smokescreen, where we expose what's really happening in Minnesota politics because the politicians and the political class oftentimes tell you to your face one thing. They sound like these staunch conservatives with all this tough talk and rousing speeches at your CD conventions and your state conventions. But what's really happening behind the scenes is so important if we're going to empower the people to take action. So, just like we did about a month ago, Jake will be joining me here shortly. We're going to expose what's actually happening with internal party politics within the Minnesota GOP. So, let's go visit this. I don't know if folks saw this, but let's see. There we go. Oh, what is that date on that paper? April 13th, pretty fresh. So, about 2 weeks ago, on the front page above the fold, Star Tribune Sunday edition says, "Fed up, state GOP fights far right group." And you can see the subtitle, "Pushes on to cut out the cancer." That's what Walter Hudson wants. Cut out the cancer. The principled people of the party of Action for Liberty, a group intent on reshaping the party. So, what does this mean? How does this happen? All these same clowns that go out there and say Action for Liberty is irrelevant, they're ineffective, pick whatever buzzword you want. How on earth does our organization get on the front page of the Sunday paper? It almost makes you wonder, if we're so irrelevant and ineffective, why would the Star Tribune waste a front page of a Sunday paper? Of course, the reality is we're very effective. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. So I'm going to bring in Jake here, and we're going to walk through what exactly is happening in Minnesota politics. The truth that the party will not admit, but we know that the best way, the best disinfectant is sunlight, right? So let's shine some sunlight on what's happening since the party refuses to do it. Joining me now, Jake Duesenberg, founder of Action for Liberty and host of The Truth Hurts.
Thanks for having me, Mort. I'm excited about this because I think people need to understand the battles that are happening, and the way that I look at it is there's not a lot of people willing to talk about corruption, and in some cases, maybe criminal activity, which I don't think we'll get into, but we've heard some things about that, and it'll never change. The political landscape will never change unless people are willing to actually expose it. And so that's what I like about the show concept that you put forward, and I'm happy to join you.
Yeah, and certainly this is an extension of when I was in the Capitol and I saw all of these things unfold in front of me, which is why everybody in that building to this day still hates my guts, but I wear that with a badge of honor. So I'm going to bring in a graphic because we were talking about this beforehand, and I think graphics helps people grasp what is happening. So I'm going to fire this up, and why don't you start walking people through what are we looking at here?
Well, what we were talking about earlier today was that, people have to understand that there's this battle for the MNGOP, and there's two main lanes here. One is the establishment, which is really dominated by what we call the Emmerites. Tom Emmer, as Donald Trump would call him, a globalist rhino. It's no big shocker to anyone that he is very influential, maybe even the premier sphere of influence inside the MNGOP, because when he's out in Washington, D.C., he's the third highest ranking guy in Congress. Okay.
Yep.
So no shocker there. Some of those activities in the state are really shocking, or I should say the Emmerites, the people that are part of his like field staff and campaign world and stuff like that. It's pretty
Yep.
expansive. On the other side, really, is the grassroots. Action for Liberty takes a lot of the heat because we're the top grassroots organizing group out there, and we're very effective at what we do. But it's way beyond just Action for Liberty. It's a lot of people that are aligned with us on the
Yep.
principles of, well, quite frankly, the principles of the party. So I think it's really important for people to understand what we want and what the Emirites want. So if you just go with the Emirites, it's very simple. They want a monopoly of power on center right politics in Minnesota. They want to dominate the MNGOP. It's very simple. And you have to understand that their objective is not smaller government. Their objective isn't necessarily just to have a governing majority, it's to have
Mhm.
a monopoly of power. It was like the old George Carlin bit. Politics is one big party and you're not in it, right?
Yep.
Or it's
Yep.
one big club. I always get that one mixed up. But that's the thing is they just need to get invited back to the club. Now the gavels will change between the left and right often, but as long as they're invited back to the club, that's the important thing. So they want to
Now,
dominate center right politics.
yeah, now let me insert this because I want to really do this maybe slower than we had planned because I want people to digest this. And once we're done with the graphic, of course, we're going to talk about some of these happenings. But everybody out there is claiming they want unity. Walter Hudson stood in front of all the state central delegates in December when David Hand was ousted. And Walter Hudson stood there and said, "We have no enemies in this room. We're all Republicans." And gee, what's changed in the last 4 or 5 months here? Walter Hudson's attacking Action for Liberty and anybody who dares support a principled organization. So, all these people claiming for unity, you have to keep in mind unify behind what? And the different objectives as we get into the Emmerites versus Action for Liberty. When you have different objectives, it's really tough to unify when you have a different mission.
Yeah, I mean, objectives of Action for Liberty are very simple. It's just to have less government and more freedoms. I mean, you can look at all of our actions. Now, people say, oh, we don't like how Action for Liberty does in politics. It's like, well, you don't get anywhere by writing love letters to politicians.
Mhm.
If you think that's the approach to politics, my God, good luck. You're not going to solve any of the world's problems. So, what we do is we come at it from an aggressive standpoint, confrontational model, because when politicians aren't moving towards that objective, then we have to be confrontational. If you think you're going to write a love letter to Tom Emmer and change his mind on putting us further into debt and funding Ukraine and funding Israel and all these other things these guys are doing, I mean, honestly, I got a couple bridges to sell you. Okay. Now, I know a lot
Yeah.
of our people will watch this video, and so they've kind of understood this already, and that's why they're here. So that's our objectives: reduce government and expand freedoms. You see how they're not going to live together. They do not
Pretty
have that.
tough to unite two
Right.
groups that have different objectives. To me, it's almost as foolish as saying, why can't Republicans and Democrats just unite? They have different objectives to some degree, I would argue, but I would say largely they might have more in common than the Emmerites Action for Liberty that we're looking at here, because the uniparty, if you will, both parties, they just want to stay in power. So you could almost argue that Republicans and Democrats have more in common, elected officials, than what's happening here as we're looking at this.
Well, that's interesting you say that. So just think about this. People go, why are you attacking Republicans? We need to be united to attack Democrats. They go, but hold on. If it's not about the principles, then why don't I just help the Democrats out? They're more of winners. Like they win in Minnesota more often. But
Yep,
why we won't help out the Democrats? Because they are very much against our agenda.
exactly.
All right. But so
Yep.
are the Republican establishment. You see, the problem here is it really always got to come back to what we're trying to do, which is reduce government and expand freedom. And unless you're on board with that, we got a big problem.
Yep.
So this is the heart of the MNGOP. It's so Emmer's going to the MNGOP and they're asking him for a couple things. They're asking, you need to rig the system against the grassroots. We've talked about this in great length in the past. David Hand did everything Emmer wanted, it seemed like.
Mhm.
They want them to provide political cover for bad behaving Republicans. You never hear them actually talk about how Republicans in the Minnesota House are literally spending more than they take in and using your surplus money, right? That's
Mhm.
that's a pretty big deal. And then the Emirates actually want to eliminate Action for Liberty. They want to get us out of the world, because how can we live in unison with them when we are essentially challenging them for power and influence inside the party?
Well, and why do they want to eliminate us if we're so ineffective and so irrelevant? Why would they waste any single breath even talking about us? But that's part of the information we're receiving that we'll get into here.
Right. And that's obviously not true, right? So, all right. So then what we're asking for the party is to support the grassroots, support people like the people in Otter Tail County, protect GOP endorsements. The establishment likes to just ignore the party's endorsements, and they've actually had cover by the party when even like its own political entities like the House Republican Campaign Committee spends money against the endorsed candidates. It's insane they
Yep.
allow that to happen.
Yep.
And
And
then
who knows? Who knows what they were paying Broadcorp for? I don't think anybody knows other than Broadcorp, but he spent all of last year bashing the endorsed candidate for CD2, Taylor Rahm.
right, exactly. And then we just want them to promote the liberty agenda, which seems to be what they should do anyhow, because it's pretty much their platform.
Yep.
So then, if the Republican Party follows through with what Emmer wants, they get lots of money, big donors. Steve Wynn of Las Vegas fame gave to the Republican Party over the last 2 years. Where do you think that connection came from? And then it gives them a seat at the table. And you obviously know that as a legislator. That's what a lot of these guys want. They just want a seat at the table.
Oh,
Now, if they embrace what we're trying to get them to do, if they come along with us in the objective, they're actually going to do well fundraising as well. There's more tickets, sold to the Lincoln Reagan dinner. Grassroots folks are going to give back to the party. Most people we encounter would not give a dime to the Republican Party because they don't think the Republican Party stands for what they stand for. And
yep.
they're conservative. So, and then also, I would argue, of 19-year losing streak of moderating to the center, maybe, just maybe, we should go the opposite direction and actually embrace what the base wants. Instead of saying abortion's really not on the ballot,
Yep.
perhaps they should actually embrace the pro-life, pro-gun, less government roots of the Republican Party. And then
Mhm.
also, I think this is very important to say. So, like, if you embrace this and you have electoral victory and you raise more money, that could be parlayed into what we all should care about, which is legislative victories. Constitutional carry, stand your ground legislation.
Mhm.
Prohibiting life, or well, let's just say life at conception, or the 20-week bill. Actually shrinking government, giving back the surplus. These are
Yep.
important things, and that's what could come out of this. But right now, the Republican Party, and which is led by Alex Plekish, is trying to play this weird game of being right down in the middle, and
Yep.
I think they're going to fail tremendously.
Yeah, that's what I would predict too. I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. And that was my message to Alex when I met with him in December is look, the party's been moderating further and further left for frankly decades. You haven't been winning. Why don't you try actually embracing the base that you abandoned years and years ago, a lot of which have decided, you know what, I'm just not going to vote. Or maybe they cherry pick which races they vote for. But if the Republicans would actually stand on their principles and deliver on some campaign promises, like right now, the House, it's a tie, right? 67-67. The Republicans in the House could go through the GOP platform and they could just find one thing and go, you know what? We will not bend until we get that thing. If it means shutting down the government, fine, but we will make sure we deliver on this one thing. But right now, it appears they're doing none of that. And the fact
Right.
that they got the Democrats to agree to a $66.6 billion budget 7 weeks before the end of session tells me they're really not negotiating very well.
That's right. All right. Well, I think the things that we want to talk about here, and I wrote down these talking points here because I want to make sure that we cover them all. So, if you think about the party not embracing liberty agenda, but they're also, the other thing is, they're not necessarily cozying up with Tom Emmer, and there's a real big rift. And
Well,
this is
and I
what
think
people
we
don't
need
know.
to, throughout this video, we should probably be careful when we say the party, because I think Alex, as the head of the party, he is definitely trying to straddle the fence and appease both sides unsuccessfully, I would add, because I can see through it, you see through it, people in Otter Tail County see through it. Obviously, Emmer sees through it as we dive into what he's been doing to the party. Everybody sees through this, fence sitting. And I just wish Alex would just go all in, one side or the other. Obviously, I'd rather he come to the grassroots side. Like David Hand, he obviously wasn't with us, but at least everybody knew, hey, he's got both feet firmly planted on the establishment side. And
Right.
he served with Tom Emmer, where Alex is just trying to straddle the fence, and he's going to fail if he doesn't pick a side here.
Yes, exactly. And I think they're too naive to realize that. So what people don't understand is Emmer. I mean, a lot of the insiders kind of pick this up, but the Emmer people are really starving them. They're actually trying to get them to fail, which is really fascinating. The things that they accuse us of, they're doing themselves. Like, we
Yes.
actually want a strong party. We just have to want to unite over the liberty agenda, but we want a strong party protecting those endorsements, embracing grassroots. The Emmer people want just total compliance. Otherwise, screw them, let them fail, because they've got committees. Listen, Tom Emmer raised $10 million in quarter one, which I think mostly went to the NRCC. None of that. They've literally stopped committee transfers to the Republican Party in Minnesota.
Yep.
And I
And,
think this is, oh, go ahead. Oh, I
well,
want
let
to
me
get
just
into numbers.
reiterate this because I don't think we hit this hard enough. What people need to know, the biggest thing people need to know is, obviously the party is struggling financially. I think they got like $100 or something, like maybe 40 grand in another account. And what's happening right now is there is a coordinated effort by the Emmerite side of this coin to make Action for Liberty the scapegoat. They're saying
Mhm.
it's because the GOP is so close with Action for Liberty, like a month after they condemned us. So
Right.
they're saying Action for Liberty is the problem. That's why the GOP can't raise money. When the truth, the party will not tell you, but we know is the truth. And I wish the party would just come out and admit it's true, is that it is Tom Emmer that is financially starving the Minnesota Republican Party.
100%. Yeah. I mean, okay, so we can go through some of the things that we do know. Their end of quarter one FEC report, and a lot of the finances of the party go through their federal account. So they have a state account, which we don't know the number for that account until February 1 of next year. But the federal account, which has monthly statements. So quarter one, they ended with 40, I think it was like $41,000 in the bank. Now they're roughly burning through about 40K a month, which isn't a crazy amount of money when you think about it for a political party.
Mhm.
Um, we've had multiple sources tell us that they're probably in the low hundreds in terms of money and cash on hand. Okay.
Not
Now,
hundreds of thousands,
not hundreds of thousands,
hundreds. Yeah.
which is what the DFL would have, right? Hundreds of thousands, maybe
Oh,
they're even
yeah.
over a million, which makes them in a weak position. Now, we're not like gloating about this, right? This is
Mhm.
really bad news, okay? And we've talked to the party, some people that are in the party, trying to get them to understand if they embrace the grassroots, stop playing this middle of the road thing, they actually could do much better, right? So, but they don't want to, like Alex's team. Alex doesn't want to embrace this, okay?
Yeah. So what's going on with this is Alex is scared to death of Tom Emmer. That's the reality. And Alex, and I kind of, you're a military guy. I never was, but this is what kind of spooks me with military people getting into politics is this whole chain of command thing that happens in the military for good reasons. Doing a chain of command in politics is horrible. So
Mhm.
he's seeing the congressional whip, right? The majority whip. And he's going, man, this is Tom Emmer. I got to do what Tom Emmer says, even though Tom Emmer is whipping him against a post. Um, and really, the fundamental reason I thought it is important to do this video is because if what I wish Alex would recognize is if you're scared of this one congressman, you ought to turn to the 6 million Minnesotans who have way more political power than one congressman. And you ought to
Yep.
tell all of Minnesota, Tom Emmer is financially starving your party. You guys need to take action. So that's a lot of what we're doing today,
Well, think about that
sharing
more.
that message.
Think about that more. Okay, so we know, you and I both know, multiple sources, that the party, the inner party, Alex's people, they feel the pressure. They know Tom Emmer and the congressional delegation is against them. Okay,
Mhm.
right? Alex knows this,
Yep.
but nowhere has he made a public statement about it.
Yeah,
The
they
only
know
public
he.
statement they make is condemning Action for Liberty, not only
Yes.
in a formal letter and then distributed by Alex Blackish, but also providing quotes to the Star Tribune. It's like Action for Liberty is not hurting you. We're trying to help you out. You don't want to listen, but you won't even say a bad thing about Tom Emmer.
Yep. He's scared to death of him. And all we're trying to do is keep the Republican Party a party of principle. I've challenged many people to this, and I'll challenge anybody watching. If you can find one thing that Action for Liberty is fighting for policy wise that doesn't nearly exactly line up with the GOP platform, please let me know because I cannot think of anything off the top of my head. So the fact that they come after us when we're simply calling out politicians who refuse to actually execute their party platform that they were elected to do, to me, Alex should be thanking us for keeping the elected officials accountable. But instead, all these politicians, Emmer included, no doubt, they just want to be worshiped. They want to be seen as almost godlike. And if you cross them, they come after you, just like they're doing to us, the Walter Hudsons of the world, and just like Tom Emmer is doing to Alex Plekish and the GOP.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't remember the platform by heart, but I think omnibus bills are against the party's platform, and you got Republicans right now pushing through massive omnibus bills that are growing government in the state. And then, of course, what is Tom Emmer and his delegation doing out there in Washington D.C., like putting us further and further in the debt?
Yep.
So here's one little nugget that people don't know. So Emmer, I mean, and we're not going to get it. So eh, Moore and I had a conversation. We didn't know if we were going to bring up some of the things that we kind of know and some of the things that we hear. Maybe you have to wait for another day, but there might be some illegality going on. No, and I'm not saying Alex's team. Okay, this is even more problems. It's like Alex is uncovering this kind of stuff and they're not sounding the alarm. We actually had to force them to admit that Michael Broadcorp, a social media influencer for Kamala and Walls, was being paid by the previous administration, the Republican Party. Like
Yep.
they weren't even going to bring that out until we forced them to do it. And then they
Yep.
still slighted us when we did it, but whatever.
Yeah.
So they have made an interesting move behind the scenes. Bobby Benson, who is Tom Emmer's chief of staff in Minnesota. I think he's got chief of staff out in DC and one in Minnesota.
Hmm.
So it's this top guy in Minnesota who's also the CD6 chair. He's also the guy behind the resolution against Action for Liberty. He's also the guy behind the resolution of the party to get rid of all the Otter Tail County delegates, which
Yep.
they failed at, and Otter Tail County got seated anyhow at the CD7 convention. But
Yep.
Bobby Benson was on the Financial Controls Committee for the MNGOP when they were approving what we believe when they were approving the finance package for Michael Broadcorp, the Kamala Harris social media influencer. He
Yep.
just got canned from it. So apparently Alex is actually doing something against Emmer behind the scenes. You guys wouldn't know this if
Yeah.
we didn't tell you, but apparently there is a little bit of retribution going on behind the scenes.
And I always got to say this because Bobby Benson, we always say it, maybe people already know this, but he's getting paid $130,000 a year of your money, taxpayer money, to really beat the snot out of the grassroots here in Minnesota. That's, in my view, that's his job. Go beat down the grassroots and keep people like Emmer in power.
I see a comment. I'm so used to on my show reading comments
Yeah.
more, but I know you like it anyhow. Carol says, and she's from Otter Tail County, and she's a real patriot. And she was one of the ones disenfranchised. She says, if the MNGOP starts standing for principles, patriots will donate to the party. Listen, I would donate to the party. I'd have
Yep.
no problem donating to the party. This is one of the things we brought up more.
Yep.
I don't think they're going to do well. Their Lincoln Reagan dinner. Here's another thing that the talk is. These are things that we've heard, and I believe it to be true. I don't know how their Lincoln Reagan speaker fell through. Elena Haba is the attorney
Hmm.
for Trump. She did take a new position, so I don't know if that new position is the reason that she no longer became the speaker. But what we have heard is trying to rebook a speaker, Emmer was blocking it, and none of the congressional members are even attending this Lincoln Reagan
Yep.
dinner, which is like the big dinner.
Yep. And I've
They're
heard the
holding it.
national committee man and the RNC national committee woman aren't going to attend, and legislators in St. Paul, state legislators, aren't attending. And frankly, like we've talked about, I got the email $180 for a Monday night with Doug Collins. Not much of an appeal to me. And what I'm hearing is the same thing, that they are struggling to sell tickets. And of course, I don't really wish that upon them, but this came down from Emmer, I think is where you're going, that Emmer took out the person who actually would draw a crowd. And the party is now kind of stuck with this Doug Collins guy, who I guess is in the cabinet for Trump, but it doesn't excite me.
Yeah, he's the veterans. What is it? The Veterans Affairs Committee or whatever.
Yeah, but I think
Department of
Carol's
Veterans
right.
Affairs.
I mean, if people, and this is again what my message to Alex was in December, you have abandoned your base, start to embrace your base, behave in a principled fashion, and you will find new donors coming back. You'll find volunteers coming back. You'll find candidates coming back, and you'll probably find voters coming back. But you've lost all four of those types of people when you just become Democrat light.
Yeah, and so, and this is another thing I think it's important for people to understand. We offered Alex to come on the show,
Hmm.
and I've offered him to come on my show, and he won't do it. I mean, you're trying to sell tickets. We have big audiences with the grassroots. Come make a pitch, but let's talk about some of these things that we want to talk about on Liberty Agenda as well. And what Emmer's doing, he won't do it.
Yep.
But he was at the. I heard he was at the Freedom Club today, a private meeting with with like big donors, but not
Yep.
coming here.
Yeah, he canceled on a Scott County BPOU get together about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he canceled last minute, several hours beforehand. I was planning on going to it anyway. That's my BPOU. And so our chair asked if I would speak. So of course I said gladly. If Alex won't show up, I will gladly fill that gap. And then they've got another event next week, and Alex refuses to come down to Scott County. So he's really, if I were him, my goal would be we are a grassroots party. We're going to hold elected officials accountable, and we are going to fight for you guys, the people who crafted the platform, to make sure we can get these things across the finish line. But he's so scared of the politicians, especially people like Tom Emmer.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's not going to win in the end. I mean, they're gonna, and everything is moving right in the direction of Tom Emmer. Like there's an argument to be made, like even talking about this is only helping Emmer more, but it'll never change. Emmer's got his thumb on this thing. What he wants at this point is for them to fail so he can insert his own guy. I mean,
Yeah.
watch, if Ellis has to step down or gets removed, watch, Emmer's going to have a person. By the way, there's another thing where Emmer might not even need the party, right? Like, I mean, the party has to exist to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's not like the Democrats are not going to want the Republican Party. They need somebody, they need a
Yeah.
punching bag, right? They need
Yeah.
somebody to go against, right? They need
Yeah.
another party. But Emmer really controls a large swath of money, and they're going to just try what they did in CD2 again and just insert their own candidate,
Yep.
despite what the endorsement. They don't care about the grassroots. They're in for, once again, remember, their objective is to monopolize power on Republican politics. It's not to actually get better elected officials. It's not to promote the liberty agenda. It's not to reduce the
Yeah.
size of government. It's just to dominate party
And this
politics.
is this was a tough pill for me to swallow, and I'm sure there are people either watching or who will be watching, where you hear something like that, where you go, "Man, Tom Emmer, what do you mean he doesn't care about conservative policy?" And he came to my CD and gave this raucous speech. He's a solid conservative. But what took me a while to really digest is there are people in politics. For the folks who watched, what was that show? Ozarks. You watch Ozarks, and for those who haven't seen it, sorry, but there's a guy who, when the wife wants to get into politics again, she finds the kingmaker of Missouri, and she goes to visit him, and she's got to go kiss the ring and do something for him, and all that guy cares about is being that center of influence. Where if somebody wants to run for Congress, they got to go through him. Somebody was trying to raise money, you got to go through him. And people watch shows like this, and I think oftentimes go, well, that's just fiction. That doesn't happen in real life. It's happening right now in Minnesota in Republican politics. That's who Tom Emmer wants to be. He wants to be the kingmaker. And you said, we almost maybe lift him up, or at least give him more attention by talking about this so much. But in my mind, there is this obvious coordinated effort to just throw Action for Liberty under the bus and say it's all
Mhm.
their fault. Nobody should support those guys. And then Tom Emmer keeps his nose clean. And to me, the goal for tonight is bullshit. You're going to get your nose dirty. People need to know that you're the guy behind the scenes that's starving the party
Yep.
until they take a knee to you. And from what I understand, he's already said, and they're using Taylor Rom as a verb. If Alex doesn't fall in line, they're going to Taylor Rom him.
Which means that basically Emmer just either buys off the candidate or just asserts his own candidate with a primary challenge. They
Yeah.
do not care about you guys. So this is,
Yeah.
I think, the culmination of what we're trying to say is that Alex Plakas needs to pick a lane.
Yeah.
This middle ground is not working.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, we don't want him to go the Emmer route, because that comes, we showed you in the chart. I don't know if you can throw that up there again, but that's what's at stake here. Is they want something for all their work. They'll give them money, but what they want is to rig the system against the grassroots. They want to. That's what happened to Otter Tail County, by the way. They want to provide political cover for bad voting legislators, excuse me, and eliminate Action for Liberty, and quite frankly, eliminate you from the process. This is
Yep.
what actually got them This is what led to the Star Tribune article. Action for Liberty has been very good at providing information to you, and it's been mobilizing and activating many other patriots like you to get involved in the political system. And all of a sudden, people were becoming delegates, and people were becoming party officers, and 3 people so far, state executive committee members.
Yep.
We have a board member on the state executive committee of the Republican Party right now. This
Yep.
is a problem for people who want to dominate. Their objective is to dominate Republican Party politics. That's a huge problem for them, but it shouldn't be a problem with them. They should just join our objective of actually reducing government.
Yeah, if these people actually cared about winning elections or passing good conservative policy, then they would get behind what exactly we're doing and they would embrace the small dollar donors instead of constantly feeling like they got to hit that easy button and just go to Tom Emmer and say, "Hey, Emmer, open up the floodgates here. We need some funding," which is obviously how David Hand did most of his fundraising.
Right. So more, I think the summary of this all and what people should do, obviously 9 o'clock, watch the Timberwolves beat the Lakers and
Yes, go Wolves.
crybaby LeBron James,
Yes.
Kamala Harris supporter. But after that, get some sleep. Tomorrow, get active, okay? If you're not following Action for Liberty, go sign the petition at actionforliberty.com. Get accustomed to what we're doing. We always have action items. We're teaching you how to take back the power, right? Don't let the Tom Emmer types take the power. You need to get involved and take the power back from these politicians. The only way we save this country and this state is taking power. And it's not an easy road. They're going to keep coming after us. But luckily, there's power in numbers, and we don't actually care that the Star Tribune writes this. Fact, we were thanking the Star Tribune.
Yeah,
for
it was
that
great.
article. It didn't hurt us at all, and
Yeah.
and the condemnation letter didn't hurt us at all.
No,
This is actually why they keep losing Democrats. They're actually not that smart, right?
exactly. I've got 6
Liberty.
copies. I got
Right.
6 copies. I'm framing these suckers. They're going up in the office. I think it's great.
They try all these things and try to get rid of Action for Liberty. It doesn't work, right? In the end of the day, we just power forward. We do not quit. We are your fighters for liberty. Okay. So what you need to do is go to actionforliberty.com, sign our petitions, get on board with what we're doing. Let's show you how to get your power back. This is what's really scaring the crap out of these people. And when we see something like this, we just double down.
Yep. Power's never given. You got to take it. So get involved. Actionforliberty.com. Thanks, Jake. That was fun. We should do these a little more often.
There you go.
All righty. See you guys.
Bye-bye.